What's up, Exiles? It's Hegemony, and I come to you with the new skill tree changes. Over the past 4 or 5 days, I've had the chance of making a lot of builds, and I put it in a Google Docs. I'll link it to you in the chat. But I've learned a lot from the tree and gone over some of the changes. The reason why I didn't want to jump the gun on this skill tree was because I didn't know what it really had to offer, and I didn't know what the meta changes were. But I wanted to share some of the major changes or build enabling things that we haven't seen before that we can see in the upcoming 1.2.0 patch, Forsaken Masters. So this is a site that I don't normally use, but it's the only way I can really mouse over stuff and show you the tooltip. So we'll use this. A lot of these icons, you'll notice, are are incorrect. The stats are okay. I think they're accurate for the most part, but there's a lot of animation or a lot of graphics that are just incorrect. But we'll just talk about the concepts overall. So what does this mean in the state of ES and life? I think the theoretical ES was extended about 3,000, which is an improvement vastly. Or overall, I felt like most of my builds did see an increase in ES and flexibility. I really like what they did with the tree with energy shield, and HP at the highest end with like a legacy combs did receive something like a 2500 HP nerf. However, at the lower ends, like when you don't have enough skill points, you're actually getting quite an adequate amount. You don't notice these huge HP nerfs until you have like super GG godly endgame gear, because the idea is having 1,000 life and multiplying by a small number of percentage life is actually going to be net you in a nerf. However, getting more flat and getting enough percent as you level is going to feel okay. I did want to discuss a lot of the tree changes involve flasks. So we have flask nodes up here, the increased effectiveness, and the new meta with the level 65 and 75. Even the seething of hallowed flask, I believe, heals up to 700 now. It's a little less than double of what it does now. So we can see GGG steering the game as a more of, or in my opinion, it's like get a couple of defenses. You're not going to be like GG godly immune like an Aegis max block build. That build, by the way, is still very, very good, and it's probably one of the tankiest builds out there. But getting a decent amount of block, 58, 60% is very achievable. Getting a respectable life, but the 4% max all res that you lost from the tree, no more elemental adaptation, no more plus plus ones right here from the Marauder tree, and then the +1 from Diamond Skin. So they definitely discourage people from getting so much resist via auras. All the aura nerfs or aura clusters got nerfed in its effectiveness and even the reduction. On top of that, you have the wrath and anger damage nerfs, pretty significant nerfing builds like the Ellie Buzzsaw. Definitely those were one of the most cost efficient builds. Now we see a spectral throw nerf and aura nerf and aura talent point nerfs, pretty significant. I think those builds will come down to where they cost effectively. You just needed a foil at the time with really good attack speed, and then your auras become your weapons. Some of the very notable changes that I see, Revelry, this is the first time we've actually seen mana on hit. So something that has like a lot of projectiles, you may be able to sustain it with Revelry. Like I'm thinking like an LMP Molten Strike would probably get a lot from Revelry. So it's a good way to, or an interesting way, like a Barrage Chain. It's kind of like a pseudo Thief's Torment type thing. Another notable change is that you have these projectile, like these graphics look weird, but you have projectile, damage, and pierce, and I feel like this is one of the things that are going to bring stuff back. Spork. Being able to pierce is like a continuation of the Spork projectile, so therefore it can hit more mobs. Also, a lot of cool COC builds. I think even though COC was nerfed by 20% base on the gem, I think that stuff like this is going to be really good because you use Fireball, Arctic Breath, or Ice Spear, whichever choice, and then you use Arc. So you have the Arc upfront payload to give you that one single shock. And shock was changed so that there's no more triple shock stack. One shock stack that gives you 50% increased damage, and any more shock stacks after that would just only replace the current duration with a new duration. So overall, huge change to COC in my opinion. If you're doing COC and you don't have these, and you're not using Fireball or Arctic Breath or Ice Spear, I think you're doing it incorrectly. So you have the instantaneous connection with Arc to preemptively shock and make your targets vulnerable, and then you have the 2 flying projectiles coming that can pierce. That is absolutely, I think it's going to be pretty amazing for COC. Even with the 20% nerf, I think we'll see some very good clear speeds with that and elemental damage overall. So the general gist of how much crit is available to you is pretty insane. However, crit multiplier definitely got reduced. Your base crit multiplier on your skill tree or on your character is now 130% as opposed to 150. It used to be 150, but they nerfed it 20%. That is your base crit multi. And then generally they took off crit multi off the tree, or they scattered it very, very far. Like I'm talking about like universal crit multi. We still have the Throat Seeker, very popular crit multi wheel here, and you have like one keystone, like a couple crit notes here. Where's Heart Seeker, and on the left side you have Cruelty, things like that. But overall, crit multi was brought down significantly going into 1.2.0, but crit chance has been drastically improved. You have the Scion crit chance. These used to be 15, 15, 15, netting you 45, but now that nets you 15, 15, 50 plus 10 crit multi. So this is a very nice crit wheel. Kind of costly when it comes to traveling down here, but I mean it's next to very good nodes, Harrier and aura reduction nodes if you need them. It's a pretty good pathway, but I can't help but notice a lot of these Flask and Life hybrid nodes. These are going to be much more benefit. Like they might not seem good to you right now, but because the Flasks have changed so much, the effectiveness of using them is going to be very, very good. I feel this is a definitely a nice change. GGG has done a really good job at supplying block, like really efficient block nodes all over the place. We had a lot of stale block wheels that definitely needed more love, but we're seeing more defensive passive mitigation through 50% increased armor, 4% chance block, 2%, 2%. Those are standard. 30%. We have a Templar wheel. Now another major change was this used to be a conversion from, and the only spell block conversion from block in the entire tree. Now if you want spell block, you can get flat spell block next to the witch tree, 8%, 2%, 2%. So totaling 12%. It's about what you would get from this one node. However, you have to spend, the extra to get there. And this one is also 30% increased energy shield. So if you're using an armor shield, and traveling up here, it's not going to benefit you that much. I like this. This is a very strong addition. Energy shield on shield, 30%. This would be good and nice with like a Wrath Pith or any significant titanium spirit shield. And you have 50% increased energy shield with 4% block. and then you can get another 4 here, which are standard nodes. They took out Bulwark, which was the node that extended here, 2, 2, and 8, or 2, 2, and 4, totaling of 8% block. But they are giving you alternatives, giving you more ES, and these can essentially be looked as ES nodes depending upon how good your gear is, and it gives you an incentive to really find that gem of a shield. In hardcore, Wrathpith is just such an amazing shield. I highly recommend it. After I buy one, of course. Alright, so yeah, this is throwing me off with a lot of the incorrect icons. So hybridization between life and energy shield, life and mana nodes. We have mana and life nodes. I found this wheel, this mending wheel, to be the least. I didn't find I used these particular nodes in most of my builds. I most 9 times out of 10 I found a better route. This is, I feel like, is kind of deceiving, but in desperation for more health and you don't want to travel, I guess it's okay. The Scion Life Wheel is pretty amazing. I feel like as a witch, HP base, or as a Templar or a Shadow, I end up finding myself traveling to at least to Constitution. Constitution is insane. 14% life, 20% flat life. It's pretty insane. And then these are all 5s, which for the most part is the new standard of life. Some places you can find hybrid like 4s and mana, or 4s and ES, 3s and weapons and things like that. Alright, so these new block nodes over here are very, very nice. Something that duelists didn't have before, so you can get really block heavy really quickly. There's a lot of good crit nodes on the left hand side of the tree now. One-handed crit nodes, two-handed. These always existed, but I think going one-handed, even crit Marauder is even possible. I think they did a really good job with this section. Deadly Precision and this Cruelty node. This is like kind of like a bread and butter. And if you are Witch or CI, you can also travel down to this left hand side if you're using daggers or one-handed weapons to get that extra crit. Disemboweling is 80 crit multi, 30, 30, and then you can get 80 crit multi here, or crit chance here. I'm sorry if I said crit multi. 40% crit here, 15 here, and then 10% fizz here. And then you're right next to really strong crit multi nodes. It's just a 2-pointer right there. Overall, the tree is pretty damn amazing. The stave nodes are very, very proximal. This used to be somewhere like up here, the equivalent to like up here. You have to travel a bunch of extra int nodes just to get there. But now Serpent Stance and this Smashing Strikes wheel is pretty amazing. Amazing enough to go crit staves. This is not blocked by stun duration nodes and enemy stun threshold. You can get to Whirling Barrier very quickly and get Barbarism, which gives you 1% max fire resist and really good life nodes, 6%. Huge changes to staves. Still, I feel like if you're gonna go staves, you probably want to avoid this. If you're going crit, if you're RT, these are probably okay for you to pick up. Some other notables. This is becoming a pretty common and popular route when you go across like this. You have the armor, life regeneration, combat stamina. I found to use. I often use these with a lot of really good heavy based life builds. One thing to note is I didn't find myself going to Golem's Blood that much. Golem's Blood used to be a place that I went to like very, very often, but now we are stuck with 5, 5, 5, and then a 5 and 1% life regen. Also, if you have to spend the extra, dex nodes or strength nodes to get there. So when I found myself in the Silent Life wheel, I was like, well, why don't I just fill this up with life wheels or more life? Because there's just so many nodes here that I found myself ignoring this part. So normally I would go across like this, down this highway. Let me just kind of draw it out. But I didn't see myself doing this too much. More often than not, I was going across like this to break out with most of my duelist builds. So pretty big change. I felt like this got quite ignored. Iron Reflexes is still in a good spot. This is still a usable highway. This life wheel right here is okay. So one of the major PvP changes is this block wheel right here. You get 2% block, 2% block, 30 defenses, and 4% block with 10% melee fizz right here, and 1% block with 15% melee fizz here. So this is pretty game breaking in the realm of PvP. 15% physical reflect. So the people that are running crazy crit multi dagger builds, either flicker, whirling blades, you know, take your pick. And now, you know, a new Viper Strike. I didn't really like the way they changed Viper Strike because I liked how Viper was unique in the fact that the itemization, what you wanted on a weapon, was very particular, and you put it on a 3-link with +1, +2. Now it's just become, I think, with a lot less flavor, but I think they were doing that just because people were having problems supporting it. Because Viper was one of those things where you hit like a wet noodle with physical damage, but it's just all about the application of the chaos damage stack. And what does this mean? Since everything is revolved around leech, your life gain on hit would be pretty bad because you're just, at best, you would have multi-strike, faster attacks, and you're not getting that many hits in, at least quality hits. And then it meant that you couldn't really life leech because it's a degen. Most of the damage comes from the degen. So I guess this was a cheap or easy fix, but it definitely took out the flavor of the items of finding that +1, +2 foil with good attack speed because it had the best range for Viper. Now you're gonna, you can go crit and scale it off that. It does have an interesting mechanic where it can stack indefinitely. So picking up stuff with increased skill duration would drastically improve since there is no limit on how many stacks you can have. It's just like an additive degen as long as you keep hitting it. So I made a couple dagger builds with like Beanos or crit daggers and utilize skill duration. Also, it's unique in the fact that your two best curses for damage would be vulnerability and temp chains. Temp chains, I think going dual curse as a Viper Striker is definitely a must, because not only do you get that offensive curse from that degen and that upfront physical, but you get temp change, which is a defensive curse and an offensive curse in your case, because it's going to drastically increase the duration that Viper lasts. It's like getting temp chains with a shock stack or temp chains with a puncture. It lasts forever. Everybody knows that feeling. But imagine temp chains, vulnerability, and like really sick incoming Viper damage. We'll probably see some PvP builds at the high end and not just like LLD, but chaos damage is really hard to come by. It really punishes people, and it's a good gear check, good dynamic. But the biggest disappointment is the +1, +2 foils gotta be tossed out the window. There's not really any use for them anymore now that the gem has been changed like that. Burning Arrow has been improved. It's pretty significantly, but overall, archery, the new uniques, infractum, things like that, those will make for good stepping stones. So when you actually find them, you'll have a lightning arrow or a split crit. You'll be able to do other stuff. Dark Scorn was also buffed. Pretty interesting major changes to some lackluster uniques. I like to see that these old uniques that are never used being brought into the game, and hey, let's actually use this or give this a shot until I can get a rare bow. As far as Marauder, the major nerfs were, these resist nodes. This was the biggest reason to go Marauder. I feel like if you level up as a Marauder, you get life really early on, which you don't really need until Cruel, but you still have the utility of tailoring your resist, respecking in and out of whatever you need. So that's still a tool that's available to you, which is good. Templar melee I still feel like is garbage, just because you have to take 4 really lackluster nodes to break out and to get to the good stuff, and you can just come in through any other class and get these Templar life nodes and amplify. There's much easier solution. Templar I still feel like is still fulfilling its role of AoE AoE elemental damage. It's still pretty much the king of that, or as good as Witch. Witch is your spellcaster. CI, Witch is actually going to be much harder to level up with energy shield starts now. You're probably going to take a while to get to life, and you're not going to get that much of it. So picking up, the right side, going energy shield, these are like really kind of wasted nodes as you go. You're probably off better going spell damage and making your way around and coming into Heart and Soul. And even then, you have quite a ways to travel to get, more life nodes. Cruel Preparation, which is still very strong. However, it's a bit more YOLO. Templar, you can get to life really quickly if you go AoE spells or AoE trap or anything like that. It's gonna have a pretty big impact on the racing. I feel like Witch can start out fast because all you need is damage really on shorter races. I wonder how all these changes are going to affect the race scene. Shadow, I really like the elemental damage changes because elemental damage is not spell damage. It makes it more unique than the spell damage nodes at Witch, because elemental damage scales off anything that does elemental, whether it be attack, whether it be a support gem, whether it be your aura. It's all going to scale. Spell damage is going to scale the upfront skill gem that is exclusively a spell, not an attack, unless you have Crown of Eyes. Then these would become attack based, and these would be pretty amazing. But yeah, elemental damage will double dip with your burn. It will support with your gems and your auras. So overall, really cool, interesting change. One of the major changes with Shadow is I found myself not really picking up 2 of these 20 crit chances because I found so many better crit opportunities or traveling opportunities. So if I went ES, I usually picked up all of these. Sometimes I left out one of the ends. Projectile speed damage, very, very huge. Something that we didn't really see. And I did make Sniper work out with Ballistic Mastery coming usually along the right side. So I would like to see Spork bringing our Spork coming back to life via the piercing projectile damage nodes, and then utilizing projectile speed and projectile damage, and utilizing Ballistic Mastery. I have a couple builds on my spreadsheet that incorporate this kind of dynamic, but getting 20 plus 20 or 20 plus 10, 30% projectile speed, making the projectiles travel faster, giving it more pathing, more clearing, and then having them actually pierce. I think this is going to be life brought back to Spork. Very, very cool changes. And I think the actual gem was buffed too. So all the mana costs are reduced across the board. Elemental hit, I still haven't seen that gem, so I can't really comment on how good I think it's going to be. Equilibrium still is a niche thing. I didn't really find myself using this Ash, Frost, and Storm wheel because these become 10 elemental damage nodes. I did end up going a crit, 2 crit in a lot of builds. Very seldom did I use Bloodless and these aura resist nodes. A couple of Unwavering Stance builds were made better in my opinion. What I really didn't like was I didn't utilize these wheels that often. Survivalist, Evasion, Elemental Resist nodes. I found myself coming through this Life End or going underneath and getting like something like Ondars, or I would come in down to Ballistic Mastery when I was picking up like Void Barrier or something like that. Another notable change, the traps. Oh my god, the traps. How can I forget this? +1 to trap, +1 to trap. Getting 2 additional traps. Being able to spam your spam your abilities is much nicer. So more often than not, you're pigeonholed to, if you use a spell gem inside a trap gem, you could throw 3 traps, and that was it. You're on cooldown. Now you can throw up to 5. It's pretty amazing. Also, being able to spam bear trap, fire trap, whatever you want for more area coverage. Huge quality of life addition to trappers. Also, additional ways to scale bear trap damage with physical damage right here. Pretty significant, something that bear trap never really had, because you know, there was elemental damage that would help you with hatred in bear trap or added fire in bear trap, but just you know, the upfront physical portion was really hard to scale unless you use crit and crit multi, and bear trap didn't have a great crit chance. Also, you have a physical master of force node. This also will help scale stuff like shockwave totem and bear trap. New additions, very interesting. This wheel I found to be one of the most inefficient. I didn't use any of these nodes in any of my builds out of maybe the 100 builds that we made. The Scion start, don't get me wrong, the Scion start was just, I still feel like it's really lackluster. If you're going Scion melee, I think this is the best way to break out. It's kind of like 18 to all res within 3 nodes, and then the 10 melee damage. Or you can go out to the attack speed route. If I had to go out to Shaper, then I'd probably go mana. These 0.4 life regen nodes and that 10 life is such a joke. I really feel like Scion is probably weaker than most. You're paying for positioning, earlier convenience to certain nodes, but in my opinion, Scion is probably one of the weakest. Duelist did end up being some of the best melee builds that I made. Like the Facebreaker, I found like Duelist was the best, and even the Crit Staffer, I felt Duelist is the best. That being said, there wasn't many builds that I found that Duelist was the best at. Wings of Entropy, I felt like Duelist was the best. I think I have like 5 Duelist builds total, and the rest are just heavily Witch, Shadow, and Marauder, Templar. Oh, I guess Marauder and Templar I had probably the same amount of builds. And Rangers were actually pretty good. Witch, Shadow, and Ranger were really, really strong in my opinion. Shadow was probably the worst. Duelist was is the best at certain things, but didn't have much variety when I came up with build projections. Marauder and Templar are very, very diverse, and I feel like they have an overall, you know, pretty good tie for, you know, second place. I would say these are all very strong. Maybe Witch is probably, Witch and Shadow are tied for first. Ranger third. Marauder and Templar tied for fourth, and then Duelist after that, and then Scion last. But overall, I really like the tree. A lot more nodes are hybridized and efficient. I felt like with the shock change, I saw a lot of people wanting to do this whole shock wheel. I felt like you could get without this, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to be attacking enough or critting or something along those lines where you're not going to need shock or the lightning skills, but in nature either have AoE, chain, or fork, or, you know, some kind of addition, and they're not just, you know, one big hit lightning things. So I felt like the whole right side of Breath of Lightning was very inefficient. In fact, I ended up trimming this unless I actually went crit. Same thing with the cold nodes. Going to Heart of Ice, I found more efficient elemental nodes. These I feel like are like kind of like a necessity. Going up and getting these 10 cold damage, 30 chill duration, 20 freeze, increased freeze duration. Then you had chance to freeze, cold damage, and then cold damage, 20% freeze duration, and chance to freeze. Those I felt like were really strong. I felt anytime you do something that's like decent hitting or ignite related. Yeah, Breath of Rhyme, and overall, if I had to go lightning, it would be Heart of Thunder if it was convenient. Otherwise, you're better off finding like crit multi or crit chance and elemental damage somewhere else. Keep in mind, lightning damage will affect like added lightning, but it won't affect like if you decide to use added cold or something like that. Overall, very nice. Athleticism got changed. It used to be like a holy fire or holy strength. It used to give you 3% in addition to inner force, but now you have athleticism, which gives you the 5%, so it's a 2% increase, but move to athleticism. So now you can get up to 21 right here, and then plus 5, 26. Pretty amazing. Super buff Arctic armor. If you're running Arctic armor, I strongly recommend that you get to this life wheel and athleticism, and you're also next to purity of flesh. Whether you go inside and outside depends on if you're going to pick up auras or not, and if you need that elementalist damage or power charges. So in a nutshell, that's the rundown. Oh yeah, these are also notable. This leech wheel is actually pretty efficient for fast attacking rapid succession. Maybe spectral throw, molten strike, even lightning strike. Lightning life gain on hit. We have four flat life gain on hit with life gain on kill and 3% leech. Very cool wheel, but kind of like niche. If you have fast attacking, multiple hits, you know, I think that's pretty strong investment. Keep in mind you have to go down one when you're, you know, coming off of barbarism. Usually people either travel up or try to get into other parts of the tree like Templar and things like that. Alright, that's pretty much a brief overview of what I've noticed in the skill tree. I hope you guys can you know, mix and match some of the efficiencies that you see and pick a lot of the defenses. And I really like that block is just so much, it's everywhere. You know, it's in good spots. There's no shortage of block, and that you can't just go like crazy block on every build like max block. So that's a very good change and good balance. Get ready to use those flasks. I highly think that it's going to be a huge part of the new meta. Reactive flask using for HP base and preemptive for CI. We have really strong flask, appropriate to the damage that we're going to take, I'm assuming. So I'm excited to see that change. And yeah, thank you guys for listening to this review, and I'll continue to do more videos as I see fit. Feel free to hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.